got it from him. Yeah, makes me feel much better. He actually sent me an email saying, when are you going to be here? And I said, around 6:40. He said, fine. So I thought it was fine until somebody else told me it was 6:30. So, the interesting thing about my experiences at Yo was when I got there, I hired Alexander Osterwalder, who was the guy who wrote the business canvas model, the original one, to come to Yo and basically give a workshop for the senior leadership team at Yo. Because when I went there, the business was already in crisis. I mean, basically, as the man who hired me, who tried to buy Switchboard when Yo was part of British Telecom, said, I waited too late, which was a pretty amazing understatement. And so when I got there, I hired Alexander Oswald to come for a week and give a workshop for us, because I knew that we were basically going to have somebody who wasn't me with a methodology that was very strong to basically break this kind of very traditional Yellow Pages company out of their mold and show them another way to look at business. And it was a very interesting process, because I came in with a plan, as is almost always the case, because I had been on the other side of this. But we went through the business model canvas, and the thing that really works about the business model canvas is that essentially it's kind of, I guess it's a kind of self-regulating model, because basically you can't stray very far before one of the inputs basically pushes you back towards the center, and it forces you to kind of examine your premises across all of the things that really make a successful business. So, when I got there, basically what I decided was that we had no business in the media business anymore, and I took a fairly radical approach to this, much to the consternation of my board and some of my investors. But the bottom line was that we weren't going to win in the media business, and there wasn't a lot of reason to go, tilting at that particular windmill. And so I made a decision that, what we really needed to do was we needed to supply small businesses with very, very good tools to help them manage the transition to digital marketing. And so essentially what we're doing at Boomtime, which is the company that I came to run for Bill, is solving the problem that the Yellow Pages publishers had an opportunity to solve and never did. Right? So, the Yellow Pages business was a wonderful business. It was, like most local media businesses, it was a turnkey business that basically provided the ad, provided the audience, and the business signed the check. It was a beautiful thing. And for about 20 years, this was probably one of the greatest business models, on the planet, right? It just threw off an incredible amount of cash. It was a wonderful business. It was all about renewal. You got to rate the customer up 3% every year, and you couldn't do anything about it. It was beautiful, right? And then something happened. And actually, when I started Switchboard, which was in February of 1996, okay, at the very dawn of the internet. And actually, Switchboard went from nothing to the 10th largest site on the internet in about 3 weeks, because all across American office buildings, people figured out that they didn't have to go to the gray locker at the end of the hall to get the phone book anymore. And so we just kind of ripped through every office park in America on Blue Mail, and people used Mosaic to get to us, right? And I thought it was going to take 5 years before I killed the Yellow Pages industry, and I guess it was a little bit, I was a little optimistic, because this is what now, 16 years later, 17 years later, close to 20 years later. But what happened was that all of a sudden, small businesses had to do a lot of things in order to actually succeed at this. It wasn't a monoculture anymore. It wasn't a media monoculture. Google controlled the traffic, Facebook controlled the social stuff. You needed all of these tools that were beyond both the ability of the small business to understand what the right thing was to do, and frankly, they didn't have the time to do it. And so in a lot of ways, that's really what we're doing. And it's what I did when I was in the UK. So, in the period of time that I was there, I built the largest, small business base in the world for Google. I put 50 or 60,000 businesses on in 2 years on Google AdWords, using a combination of technology and very sophisticated tools. Okay, so how does this relate to what Bill was talking about? Well, the way that we did it actually was we used, and at that point I hadn't heard of lean startup stuff. I had met Alexander Osterwalder at a conference and been really impressed with him. And basically, what we began to use these lean startup methodologies when we went out into the market and tested our products. And today in Albuquerque, as we are rolling out the products that we're coming out to market with today, basically we're doing the same thing. We actually go into the marketplace with paper prototypes of software products, right? Big, thick binders of paper where we actually ask people, to go through the selection process so that we can figure out what's working and what's not working, take it back to the software development process, make better software, and then take those same slices of the product and turn them into little mini apps and run those past the customer as well. So by the time we get to the marketplace, we have made, I'd like to say 75% of the mistakes that we're going to make is probably closer to 50, but a lot less than we would make if I just said, I know exactly what to do, and we're going to do that, because I would inevitably be wrong. So we use the same market testing methodology every day, basically. And we change the product, not every day, but in the product we have in the marketplace today, which we put into the marketplace in March, we have released 100 versions or more of the product, okay? So we release a couple versions of the product every week based on the feedback that we get from the marketplace. So we are inextricably bound up, in that marketplace. And the principles behind the Lean Startup methodology really boil down to, this combination of not investing a lot before you find out whether you're right or wrong, having an organizational structure that allows you to change very quickly when you realize that you are wrong, okay? And basically iterating, because that's what we do in life, okay? We make mistakes all the time, they're not very consequential, we course correct, we recalibrate our trajectory, and we're reasonably safe. Well, that's what we do. So rather than making the $10 million bet, that we made on Switchboard when we started it, we make these very small bets pretty much every day, and they have a much bigger impact on our business. So what we sell to small businesses really are the tools that they need, and we sell them to them under a managed service model, because the other thing that's really broken about the Yellow Pages model is it's a fire and forget type of model. I mean, my sales guys had 300 customers apiece, and they saw them once a year. And they said, I'll be back next year for a check. And 6 months in, particularly as digital media was ramping up, they said, well, you're not doing anything for me anymore. I don't need you. And some guy who's smarter than you came in, and he sold me something, so by the time you get back to renew it, they say, you're done, right? And so our model actually is to go and see them more frequently. And this is the big products, okay? The Yellow Pages industry had, 10 years ago, had 7.5 million customers in the US alone. And it was a $14.5 billion business. And they lost 5 million of them in 10 years, okay? It's a much smaller business now, all right? And, those small businesses basically spend, somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000 a year on their marketing, right? So you're looking at a marketplace that's worth $25 billion in the US. And the interesting thing about this, I'll give you 2 examples, because I think that they're really important. One of them is an article I read yesterday in the New York Times about energy in Germany, right? And I hadn't realized this. I mean, my daughter lives in Germany, and they're very serious. She has about recycling into the lake and saving energy, of course, as well. But what the article said was basically the Germans have been so successful at building alternative energy sources that most of the energy companies in Germany that were part of the grid that use fossil fuels are now in serious financial difficulties. All the plans that they put in place 15 or 20 years ago to build these plants and bring them online, they're shredded at this point. And the Germans are trying to figure out, because now 30% of their energy comes from the windmills, and from other sources, right? And another example of this is Uber, which took aim at an $11 billion monopolistic transportation model, taxi cabs to the rest of us, right, and basically disrupted it. So what's happening in our business, and it's happening in a lot of businesses, is that we're actually able to use software and different labor models to disrupt these marketplaces. We don't have a sales force that we pay, right? What we do is we attract people from the 30,000 media salespeople in America who work for companies that they know are flying into the mountain. And these are the smarter people, and we say, you're going to get screwed, by the people that you work for, because basically they're going to change the comp plans on you, and you're going to make less every year as they make less, right? So it's not, you don't have a really big upside in your business. But if you come and work with us, we'll give you the tools, and we'll give you 40% of all the revenue that flows out. So the average rep that comes to work for us over a 2-year period of time can make about 50% more than they make with the traditional media publishers that are with today and in the future, which is important to the ones who are smarter. Okay, so what's the moral of the story? Look, the reason I think that Bill invited me to Albuquerque to do this, and he specifically asked me to come here to build a company in Albuquerque, and I agreed to do that, is because Bill already had done a lot of the work that needed to be done. He built a great platform that I am using to basically power these very sophisticated mobile sales tools that we send people out into the street with. And they're very cool, actually. They use expert systems technology, to kind of decompose the way that people make decisions when they're buying small media products, right? So we have a website product that we'll be releasing in about 3 or 4 weeks. Think of it as economy for websites. It's a visual personality test for websites. Because we sat down with businesses and we basically spent the time with them to decompose how they actually make their decisions, and we built the software to do that, right? And it's all based on this same principle that ABQ ID is based on. That you can basically take a small company, and we're in the middle of that pack, right? Of Bill's pack. And we hope to be, the one that goes like that, because, we're going after a very big marketplace, that is fairly disrupted at this point anyway, with a bunch of small businesses that are unhappy with the products they're getting from people. But it's the same underlying, techniques that drive our business, that drive, the businesses that Bill is building. I think that's, there's the...
We have the winning slide, right? So this is the Oakland A's, and they didn't win the World Series, but they won their division, and they were pretty happy about that. And I think actually if we won a division in Albuquerque, we'd be pretty happy with that too. And this is what we're doing. With ABQID, we're creating startups en masse that are going to become what Mark is running now, that have that ability to grow really big businesses fast. And what we're really doing is creating an ecosystem. So ABQID is part of a much bigger initiative, Innovation Central, and this all feeds itself. So 2 of the companies that are in the ABQID Accelerator right now are U&M tech transfer companies. Really cool technology that was developed at U&M. Lots of people don't realize how big of a research university we have right here in U&M. And the entrepreneurs that make up those companies in ABQID, a lot of them have come out of U&M and CNN. And those entrepreneurs, the serial entrepreneurs that are helping them, the mentors that are helping those companies, a ton of them are Academy alums. Those companies that go into ABQID are then feeding the rest of the system. So when those companies graduate, they're going to come out and they're going to go into the Fat Pipe Incubator, they're going to go over to West, they're going to go into what is the future home of Innovate ABQ. This right here is Central and Broadway, right? This is the center of Innovation Central. What we're doing is creating this concentration and focus around our startup activity, because we get all kinds of wonderful collisions that come out of this. When you bring all our entrepreneurs together over and over again, just by bringing them together, you end up with really wonderful things. And we're making that happen right now. So the goal is not just about the 10 companies that we're bringing in every year. It's about creating an ecosystem that fosters entrepreneurship and has the ability to have a very significant impact on Albuquerque and on New Mexico. And do we have any time for questions? So this will be a lot more interesting if you